Hey guys, back with another video. Sorry I haven't uploaded for a long time, but I've been very busy with all kinds of other things. So I'm just going to give basically a rundown of different things and projects and, failed projects also that I have done this year. So this will be a two-part series. The first part is most of the year, January through, I think, October or so. And then I'll have a final part that I'll probably release around New Year's or Christmas time. So let's get started. So one of the first projects I did was fix a Keurig coffee machine. The thing was clogged with coffee grounds and I had to take the entire thing apart, but I got it all back together. All I had to do was cut some of the plastic parts because I couldn't get the whole thing together. It was like a 5-point hinge. It was just awful. I had to fix the Kirby. There was no airflow in it. As you see, there was so much dirt in it. It just wouldn't suck anything up. And these were just massive chunks. You see right there's a huge crack, and that's just like grease and dirt and grass and all kinds of filth. So I scraped it all out. I washed it, cleaned it. Now it works a lot better than it used to. Of course, I have made a video on this. This is the soap project. I don't need to get into this very much because I already made a video about this, but I made some soap with lye and just used some essential oils, some other flavoring, I guess you could say it's flavoring, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. Did a project with my dad for a client. Here's a drawer that we made. Turned out really nicely. Don't have too many pictures from it, but drawers work really nice. Customer is happy. In March, I got started with my first failed project of the year. This was an idea basically to create a humidifier or a fan that would turn on and off in the bathroom when the humidity increased. And I would use an Arduino with a DHT11 or a DHT22 temperature and humidity sensor that would turn on when the humidity from the shower caused the humidity to rise in the room. Because, obviously it fogs, and then the paint and the stuff on the walls eventually kind of peels and gets soggy. So I wanted to prevent that because my brother and sometimes even me would forget to turn the fan on before showering. So I made this contraption that would basically use the sensor right there, plug into the Arduino, and then whenever the temperature and the humidity went up, it would use a servo to basically flip the switch on and off. Unfortunately, this didn't really work out. I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think it was mostly due to the temperature and humidity sensor. It just wouldn't register with a higher humidity, even when there was tons of water on the mirror, so that was a problem. As you can see, I also made the globe thing, whatever you want to call it, wooden ball. I have a video on it. I'm not going to say very much about it because obviously, why would I say something about it that I've already told you all about? So go and watch that video. But it turned out nicely. One of the greatest projects I've done so far. I also made a frame basically for my world map that I've had for years, but never gotten to putting on the wall properly. It used to come in a roll, but I got to put on some, it's like a cardboard white sheet, and then obviously that warped and isn't very good for putting on the wall, so I made a frame. As you can see, there's the lap joints. Putting it all together wasn't too hard of a project. Probably took like 2 hours to make, but I got that together, mounted it all up, and well, I put the keyhole on the bottom of the frame, so basically I can only hang the map upside down, so I still have to put another keyhole on the other side. So, oops. Made a clamp jig rig so we could store all the clamps and easily remove them. Before, we had to just clamp them onto a shelf. Now again, the Kirby broke down, the drive thing basically just fell off, and it wouldn't move forward and backwards, or you couldn't switch between neutral and drive. So I had to take it apart, push back the spine, and then I cleaned inside, greased it up a little bit, and so far it hasn't fallen apart. This is just a model airplane I made. I bought this, 10 years ago, and I never finished it, so I decided I would just finish it and do it properly. As you can see, I sanded it carefully and got all the cracks out, painted it very carefully with the special silver paint, and got no drips on it like I did before. Like 10 years ago when I first got it, I tried to paint it with a paintbrush and it looked awful because you see all the paint strokes on the reflective paint, but I did it properly this time and it looked really nice and it turned out well. I still haven't put all the decals on because I'm kind of lazy, but it looks pretty much what a regular F86D would look like, which is a later model. This is a chair, stool thing that I've made. I don't know, I can't even remember when I made it, but it's meant to be a bar stool, and I have some other clips from it that I could show you, but it's just been sitting in the shop unfinished. At some point I need to finish it and put a coat on it, but I just haven't come around to it, and with the temperature getting colder, I really could care less about it, honestly. But here's some shots of it. Looks cool. Also, we got a freeze dryer. Dad made the stand. One of the largest projects, computer projects that I did was fix my MacBook. Basically just wanted to get more performance out of it, so I got some pentalobe Torx screws, whatever Apple uses as their proprietary screw. I opened it up and basically just took it apart and removed the insulation from the back. The problem was that it was the CPU always bottlenecks and it gets to a certain temperature and then it just won't go any faster because it can boost a lot faster, but once it gets hot it just won't go any farther. So I decided I'd remove the insulation from the back plate, usually the part that touches your lap, and then I would sandwich a thermal pad, which I learned online. You can get a thermal pad, which is basically just a really thick thermal paste of a certain thickness, and you can sandwich that instead of the insulation between the aluminum back and the top of the CPU cooler, and it will transfer more heat away from the CPU and onto the huge aluminum plate. And so far it has worked really well. I haven't had any problems with it. No weird noises. The fan, of course, it still blows through the CPU cooler. No issues. And besides, obviously, your lap gets really hot, but I almost never use it on my lap, so it's not a problem. So, usually get 9 to 11%, sometimes 15% better performance, but it never hits 100%, or 100 degrees Celsius, which is great. Another thing I did was make a splash guard basically for the birds, because they always walk on top of wherever their water dish was and then poop and drop stuff in it. So I got tired of changing their water every day and just made a plexiglass thing to go over it. Chicken. In August, I made basically a replacement motor for the ice cream machine. I wanted to motorize it again, so I took a motor that basically stirs and dispenses ice from our old fridge in the freezer and hooked it up with some gears. It already has a gear reduction, but I just made some homemade gears out of like plastic decking material so that it would spin it. Overall, I mean, it does the job. It has really good torque, and it spun it really well. The only problem is that after about 15 to 20 minutes in 75, 80 degrees, 80 degree weather, the thing overheats and then it just won't crank anymore. Which obviously 15 to 20 minutes, I mean, usually you can stir it enough to actually make ice cream. You just have to be patient. It will crystallize, but if you wanted to go for, the recommended 30 to 45 minutes, the motor just overheats. It's meant to be in a freezer, so you either have to put the motor in the freezer before you run the whole thing, or do it when it's December. I don't know. But it's kind of a failed project, but it does work. In October, I decided to make a flag-styled banner for my keys. I'd done this before for my phone case, but I wanted to try it for something a little bit smaller and cooler. So I decided to use some cool-looking red-colored wood. I forgot what kind it is, but I made it look very realistic. I was very excited to put it all together. Got some nice pipe hardwood to go around the edge, so that would be really strong and hold the little ID card in there. However, unfortunately, the tether on it broke, and now it doesn't work anymore. I'm not going to show any more projects from the year, because this video is getting kind of long, but I'll release some other smaller projects and maybe some short version stuff later.